Alrighty, guys. Well, I'm calling this the Bitcoin SV Train Cabin Fever Edition since everyone's under lockdowns, quarantines, shutdowns. First of all, where are you guys? TK?
I am in Charleston, South Carolina.
Right. What's the situation like there?
So it's interesting. So we're not on any kind of official lockdown, although everybody is pretty much practicing social distancing out here. Right. It's pretty quiet. Most people are staying in. All of your restaurants have shifted over to carry out. The grocery stores are closing earlier, all the typical stuff. But, you'll still see people out, walking their dogs and that kind of jazz. But it's not as dramatic as it was when I was in LA.
Yeah.
Just a couple of weeks ago. And everything was just shutting down. It was so weird because at one point, my Uber driver was taking me back to my hotel. And he goes, "Hey, do you mind if I take this call? It's from my boss. I've been waiting to hear from him." And I go, "Sure, man, do your thing." Puts it on speakerphone and his boss lays him off right there.
Oof.
And we spend the rest of my ride home just talking about how he's handling that, how he's coping, what his plan is going to be. And just witnessing that in real time, man, people dealing with the harsh realities of the economic fallback, man, having to figure out how they're going to pay their bills and all that. And I mean, a big city like LA, man, where there's so much happening, you feel the effects of it really strongly. So I was just glad to get back to the South where it's a little bit more quiet. It's a little less crazy. It feels a lot more safe. This is the place I'd rather be at a time such as this, but we're holding up just fine out here. We're staying positive, and more importantly, we're staying creative and constructive.
Excellent.
What we can control.
Well, that's one of the reasons I invited you to come on today, because you seem to be the guy who's got that positive attitude, that uplifting message in everything you do, and it's I think we could all use that a bit right now.
It's true. I appreciate that as well, and it's every day. It's like a few motivational tweets, and it's always keep it positive. There was one a couple of days ago about that thing that you were interested in before COVID came along. Keep doing that thing, it's all right, keep it real, sort of keep it on the lines.
You know what, before I go any further, guys, I just want everyone to know who you are. So of course we got TK Coleman. I think probably most people who are watching this now know who TK is. You're the director of entrepreneurial education at fee.org. Do you pronounce it fee or FEE?
We say fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, stands for the Foundation for Economic Education.
Yeah, I've been watching your series called the Revolution of One, which is it's sort of more about how would you call that? It's more of a motivational series, I think, or inspirational series, inspiring people to get out there and be creative. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I would say so. I like to say that I'm not merely trying to create a society in which every person feels free. I'm trying to create an individual that can figure out how to be free in every society. And so the idea behind Revolution of One is inspiring people and informing them in such a way so that they can learn how to take charge of their own lives and create freedom at the individual level, because freedom at a collective and societal level is only a reflection of what we happen to do every day. Yeah, at a personal level. I always say that, politics is a lagging indicator of what happens at the level of the individual. And so the whole show is about encouraging people to think about how they can vote for themselves in the marketplace every day, how they can take action, take responsibility for creating the world they want to see without sitting back and lazily waiting for the right person to get into office. You want to see the world change, you can't afford to wait for the right person to get in office. You got to be the right person in the world, and start with your neighborhood, start with your family, start with your health, all of that stuff. So Revolution of One is about exposing people to the stories of game changers, entrepreneurs, leaders, writers who are living that out in some kind of way, and who share their ideas on how you can live that out in your own way.
Awesome. Well, actually, I think that's all we need to hear. So thanks for joining us, everyone. No, but I want to introduce Richard as well. This is Richard Boase, who was he's one of the original Bitcoin commentators and reporters, but he's been in hibernation for a long time. Richard, I think you're practicing a bit of extreme self-isolation over there in Koh Samui. Is that where you are now?
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for coming back and making your re-debut.
Uh, Thanks for having me on, John. So it's nice. You've been a great point of contact, actually, and the last year has been really exciting, and particularly with Craig coming back and SV and everything like that. So I think that's when we sort of started talking again properly, isn't it? About a year ago.
Yeah, for the record, I've actually known Richard since before I had anything to do with him or even met him, because I was listening to you on Let's Talk Bitcoin a couple of times. This is when I was working at my old job before I even got into Bitcoin, and you helped school me a little bit on what it was and why I should get into it. That was before I'd even met you at all.
And that was back in 2012
or 2013, yeah.
And I kind of dropped out of the scene about 2014, and I got really disillusioned with the whole thing. And then, of course, when 2017 blew up, that was, you couldn't ignore it, right? Everyone was raving about ICOs, and we were all lost, and there was tons of new people coming in.
Yeah. It's really gone through phases, and I think there's been, phases of excitement and, phases of big disappointment, and phases of stagnation. And sometimes I think the current period is a little bit of all of them thrown in together. I was very positive when BitcoinSV came along, because it finally gave me a chance to hear all of that old inspiration again. I'd gotten really cynical and jaded about the whole scene. I think it was the ICOs that did that. I'd been to a whole bunch of blockchain conferences and sort of had to listen to a bunch of people who didn't seem to know anything about Bitcoin or blockchain at all talk about their token project, and it was getting me down. It's hard to say getting me down when I can hear birds in the background, because it sounds so idyllic over there, Richard.
Yeah.
Why are you in Koh Samui? Are you? It's got nothing to do with the current pandemic, has it?
Sorry?
It's got nothing to do with the current pandemic. You were there before.
No. I've been here for a few months. I've been training, working out, and just kind of getting healthy. I was living in London. I was very unhealthy. And I had planned to kind of run away to Thailand for a long time. So I finally managed to break away. And actually, mostly I was driving Uber when I was in London the last few years, in the couple of years before that. So it was just a kind of question of just like working until I could get out of London and get to a healthier lifestyle. And I think the big moment for me was, I think the beginning of the new journey was kind of discovering the CoinGeek conference in November, was it 2018?
Right.
And I'd just come back from Africa from a Bitcoin project that I'd been doing out there, that I started out there in 2014. And I met these guys, and they were from blockchain domes, and they were saying, and I sort of said, "Oh, you've been to a Bitcoin conference. What was it like? What are you doing?" And they explained about Craig Wright and what he was doing with Script and the block size and And I kind of heard it, and I went, that's crazy. And the more I listened to them, the more I was like, oh, right, this is like a really serious project. And I didn't know about the split between Bitcoin Cash. Like, I'd been really out of the scene completely for the block size debate. Yeah. When I was around in 2012, I got into it in 2012, but around maybe 2013, 2014, when the block size debate started becoming a thing. When I first heard about, we can't scale the block size up, my initial reaction was, oh, that's a real shame, because of all these wonderful things we can do with the blockchain. And what's this argument about centralization and banks taking over the network and stuff didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And the more that argument progressed, the more I kind of thought, I don't really understand what the objection is here. And then I think Adam Back came out, and he suggested side chains. And that's when I kind of lost it. And I think it was just before they renamed it to Bitcoin Core, maybe a year before that. And I kind of lost the conversation there, because the financial instruments that people were talking about building on Bitcoin did not make any sense to me. And sidechains was kind of the last straw. I was kind of like, I didn't understand the point of altering the protocol. To me, that was a big moment, because obviously the point of Bitcoin is that it's so stable, right? Everyone's in agreement, everyone's in consensus that you can't change it. And if you change it, then really what's the difference between that and debasing the currency? So for me, that was kind of a moment when I just threw my hands up and I said, I don't understand this anymore. And it's clear that there's some other people in charge who are prepared to tinker with it. And, you know, like I say, there were a lot of financial instruments coming out. There was a flood of new people who understood finance in a way that just was completely beyond me. Or, you know, and lots of people who claim to understand these instruments in ways that would be on me. So I couldn't really keep up at that point. You know, I was never a finance guy. I trained as a journalist, I trained as an artist before that. So, you know, it's just
how do you train as an artist? How do you train as an artist?
Well, a multimedia artist.
Right.
I was doing like digital art from college, and then journalism was my master's. And I thought financial journalism, great, this is really interesting, and I dived into Bitcoin. But like I say, like I couldn't take it after a certain amount of time. And then all of those early coins, Mastercoin and so forth, and Counterparty, people were also, yeah, exactly, Omni and Counterparty came out. People were doing all sorts of weird and wacky things. And then it was people coming in and saying, oh, you know, isn't it great, tokens for the sake of tokens? And they started selling just nonsense to the market, you know. And it was really sad, because you could see that there were people that were scammers, but they had quite a good game. Like, you know, they were selling something that kind of sounded possibly legitimate, but you couldn't quite tell whether it was real or not. And I think and like someone said to me, Craig was a real breath of fresh air. And that's exactly my experience. So seeing that talk in Arnhem in 2017 was a big turning point.
Yeah, it was. For me too. And TK, like, you're going to have to fill me in a bit on your background here too. By the way, you guys can feel free to ask each other questions too if someone says something that inspires a question. But TK,
can I dive in on something?
Yeah, please, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, you know, so I think you're absolutely right about you know, exactly what happened with the whole ICO thing. One thing I'd add to it though is I'd say a lot of it was just people flat out scamming, but some of it was based on a sincere desire to help the blockchain realize its full potential, based on people being misinformed about the true nature of Bitcoin. So once you accept or perpetuate a lie about Bitcoin not being able to scale, then if you are the type of person who sees all of these amazing possibilities, it now becomes necessary to do it outside of Bitcoin, right? And so I think if you take Ethereum, for instance, I think a lot of the people who are excited about Ethereum are sincerely inspired by this concept of a world computer. Like, it sounds amazing. When you listen to the vision of Ethereum, it actually sounds very romantic. There's something about it that sounds right. And if you've been taught that Bitcoin can't scale, then what option do you have other than to go outside of Bitcoin and create some other system? And no matter what criticisms we can make of that system, what do you expect people to do when they have no other alternative? You know, so I do think there are a lot of sincere people. I don't think it's all scam artists. I think there are many sincere people who are the unwitting victims of being miseducated by scam artists, and they're just trying to figure out a way to make it work because they don't realize the truth, which is we can do it all on blockchain. We can do it all on Bitcoin. Come back home. You misunderstood what it was really all about. So we're kind of living in the middle of what I hope to be a modern day prodigal son story, you know, where the people who have left because they misunderstood what the value of what they really had will eventually come back home. And when they do, hopefully we can, you know, embrace them with open arms and say, welcome back.
I think so too. That's why I don't like driving anyone away from the space.
That's true. But it's very clear, right? Is it's now we're living in a low trust environment, and people don't trust Bitcoin in the way that they would have done had this drama not happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as a result, and I'm very conscious of this, that that if I were to try and talk people into it in the same way that I used to and be really enthusiastic about it, people will say, not only it's like, oh, it's a scam, but it's a pyramid scheme. People are just selling it for their own interests, you know?
Totally.
And I don't actually know how to counter that right now. I mean, I'm not selling it directly to people. And I'm also, but I'm conscious of the fact that it doesn't work unless we use it as money not every day, but like continuously. So the old sort of store of value problem still applies. It's like you'd rather spend your fiat than you would spend your Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's true. Well, in most cases, you don't have the chance to spend your Bitcoin. It's because around me, there aren't many people who will accept it. I think that's why we saw the HandCash donation frenzy happening early this year, because there wasn't really much other chance to use it. You either send it to an exchange and trade it, or you send it to other people and play with it. But I mean, yeah, of course, there's services that you can buy with it, but it's not really everyday stuff. It's specific purpose items.
Right. But I mean, again, like coming back to this thing, it's a difficult product to sell.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem that it is a product rather than just being cash. And also right now, then my main concern is it ethical to sell it, the idea or the token or the technology, to people in this moment of crisis, right? Because nobody knows what the hell is going on.
Well, that's a good point.
Why would it be unethical to sell it in this moment of crisis?
Well, this is a big question for me right now, because it's risky, isn't it? It's always been risky. You've got the Fed printing, I think they just said something like 6 trillion more today. It's like, okay, this is in a sense what Bitcoin was, created for, as an inflation hedge. So you would think, okay, this is a good product to sell to people. That justifies selling it. But I'm not so sure. And not from the point of inflation not being real or something like that. It will have a knock-on effect. It'll pour over into every technology, every market eventually. But right now, it seems like, and this came up on Twitter just yesterday or the day before, it's irresponsible to sell. Someone was saying it's irresponsible. Corey Seal was saying it's irresponsible to go out and sell this product right now because you don't know what's going to happen, right?
He did, yeah. I've wavered between. Well, yeah, I was going to say, TK, this is one of the main points I wanted to quiz you about today, because I know at Fee you're all about individual responsibility, economic freedom, that kind of thing, and over the past few weeks, it's sort of I've had a bit of trouble staying focused on Bitcoin lately. I get up and I go to say something about Bitcoin, and I think, is there anything new to say? Is this even important to people now? So I want you to try and tell me, or please convince me that yes, it is still pertinent, and in fact, it is more relevant than ever to be talking about Bitcoin right now.
I absolutely do think it's more relevant than ever.
Good.
So I think one important thing is to expand our concept of what it means to invest in the future beyond spending dollars on it. Right. And I think the easiest way to talk about investing is, you're spending money buying coins or whatever. And so if our only concept of investing in the Bitcoin ecosystem is buying tokens, that's very risky, right? Because some people don't have any money. They're not very liquid. People that just lost their job. You got to be careful about that, because, and that's not even investing anyway. That's speculating, right?
Yeah.
So I get that, but I actually believe, and this is something that I wrote about around 2017. This kind of answers at the same time how I got into this. I was surrounded by a lot of people at that time, whether it was through friendship or work, who were really into Bitcoin, but before it was really on my radar. I had worked with Jeffrey Tucker, who was talking about it all the time and writing about it all the time. Naomi Brockwell, who was talking about it all the time and making all these videos on it.
Yeah.
I was talking with Steve Patterson and Derek and Isaac, and they were talking about this stuff before I was even interested in it. And when I saw the price go up, in 2017, it was one of those screw me kind of moments, right? Because people were telling me about this when the value was so low, and I just sort of procrastinated studying on it. And then, the value went up really high. And of course, I sold myself on this story of, man, I could have been really well paid had I only paid attention at that time. And one of the mental adjustments I had to make, because at that time, I didn't understand it well enough to realize that the game wasn't over. I thought it had peaked, right? I thought, the opportunity was over.
Yeah.
And here's something that I realized. I realized that if Bitcoin is going to change the world, if you truly believe that, then that means every aspect of society as we know it is going to change, right? Because the plumbing for information exchange is going to be transformed, as well as the kind of money that we use to exchange value. All of that's going to be revolutionized. That means you have inside knowledge on opportunities that are going to open up in every sector. I mean, the notion of profiting from the rise in value of a coin is only the beginning. That's only like the first level of speculation.
Yeah.
What about, I'll just give you one example. Let's take economics. Universities all across the world, most of these economics professors, they're scared of Bitcoin. They don't want to touch it. They can't teach it yet because the information's changing too fast. There's a lot of disinformation. It's high risk. And so a lot of them, the people that we look to as experts in economics, they don't really know about it. They're not really touching it, right? People that choose to study it and inform themselves now can have a huge leg up, even on people that are smarter than them when it comes to opportunities 2 years from now, 5 years from now, to teach people about Bitcoin and to spread the ideas. Or let's take understanding the tech behind it. For people that, and there are people who are like this. Josh Hensley is one of these kinds of people where Bitcoin inspired him to learn how to code, right?
Yeah.
This isn't something that he had been doing 15 years ago. He got interested in Bitcoin around 2017 and said, I'm going to learn how to code so I can build. And now the dude's teaching classes. Now he's developing projects on Bitcoin. So if you're someone that doesn't have any money, I would say you can invest in Bitcoin by just taking 15 minutes out of your day every day and picking some aspect of the philosophy, the technology, the economics, and studying it. And there's a really good chance that as this stuff starts to move into the mainstream, you'll be able to create some kind of career opportunity for yourself because you will have a leg up on people that don't know about it. So you can learn how to code. You can start studying computer science. You can start studying economics. You can start participating in the philosophical discussions because there's going to be a need for a lot of people in every field who understand what's going on and who's going to help onboard the world onto this entirely new system. It's not just about getting money. You have inside knowledge about how the world is going to work. Use that to try to position yourself to be more valuable in the future.
Well, I can verify personally that that's true because I was never a Bitcoin investor and I've never been a big Bitcoin holder, but I've been working in Bitcoin since 2013. Sometimes it's a bit of a problem because people think I am a big Bitcoin investor and holder, and I'm actually not because I've never bought any Bitcoin. I've only ever earned it by doing work for people. So most of my trading has been just selling Bitcoins that I've earned. Oops, I think we just lost Richard there. I hope he comes back. But anyway,
yeah.
I was yes, but it is absolutely true.
I'll give an example of let's say we lived in a world where basketball didn't exist and no one heard of it. And maybe you met the guy that invented basketball. He explained the game to you. He demonstrated it to you. And you had a vision of like the NBA before it ever happened, right? You realize that one day we're going to wake up in a world where there's a multi-million-dollar industry that's oriented around this sport, right? And you realize that there are not only going to be players who play the game, but there are going to be people who make millions of dollars being sports commentators and journalists and writers. There are going to be people who are coaches. There are going to be people who are tutors. There are going to be vendors and suppliers built up around the industry. If you had that knowledge, there would be more ways to capitalize on your vision of the NBA than just by being a good basketball player. Even if you suck at basketball, you have about 50 different ways that you can get the leg up on everybody else to create an awesome career for yourself when this thing takes off, just by knowing about it first. You can almost pick and choose what you want to do if you're 5 years ahead of people. Even if you're dumber than everybody else, just by being 5 years ahead of them, you can capitalize on some amazing career opportunities.
Well, that's a really good example. Yeah, I think if you look at the entire NBA infrastructure, like what percentage of that is actual players and coaches? It'd be minuscule.
Yeah.
So yeah, all kinds of support stuff.
I mean, these players have accountants.
Yeah.
Right. They have lawyers,
publicists.
They have PR managers. They have agents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have coaches. There's assistant coaching staff. They have nutritionists. They have fitness trainers. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so many things. And that's just focusing on the individual players. What about the teams? They have pilots. You know what I mean? They have so many different things. And, you know, we have to think big about what the ecosphere really is. I think it's low level thinking to just, you know, be like, oh, I need money to buy coins. I think it was Brendan Lee who talks about this a lot. He talks about not even focusing on buying it. He talks about trying to earn it.
Yeah.
Because if you try to earn it, you have to think about how you can contribute to the actual growth of Bitcoin itself. So here's the biggest thing. We can be a part of history, man. If you think this is one of the biggest revolutions in history, how awesome would it be for you to study your butt off over the next couple of years, so that if it takes a while to take off, you can be one of the people who said something, who wrote something, who did something that actually led to it winning. And you can be able to tell your grandkids one day, yeah, I was one of the OGs. I helped bring that thing into reality. That's legacy stuff, man. You can do that without being rich. That's legacy stuff.
Indeed, yeah. Actually, I'd really like to hammer that point home to everyone. It's like you don't have to be an investor. You don't have to be a tech to get involved in Bitcoin. I'm neither an investor nor a tech. I do journalism. I do media, and I'm not a good coder. Like I've studied enough just to know what's going on, but I couldn't even write a hello world in most languages. So yeah, it's really not necessary to understand all that. It's not necessary to understand market movements and your price speculation or even look at the price at all. You've just got to go out there and do something. There's going to be a whole industry supporting this, and you're just to find some way to participate is the important thing.
Yeah, and I think the innovation on Bitcoin will continue long past our death, right? It's like... It's not like, let's just say there's some kind of a moon scenario, right? Which what everyone loves to speculate about. Let's just say we achieve global adoption in 2 years and Bitcoin moons. It's not like it's over. That means it's just beginning. And that means the entrepreneurs will begin to come in and start innovating and coming up with ideas. And man, I mean, there's a significant first mover advantage for people that are thinking about this stuff now, you know?
For sure. And I guess, you know, that was part of the theme today. I mean, I do agree with everything you've said, and I do agree, Brendan Lee, Joshua Hensley, all those guys are people that you definitely should listen to if you're interested in this, because they have some pretty different perspectives beyond just my advice to anyone out there interested in Bitcoin is just like, don't look at all the trading stuff. Unless you're a techie, sort of avoid a lot of the techie stuff as well, but just look for general information. There's a lot of it now. But it does feel strange to be talking about all this right now when everyone's locked in their house in most places. I know you're not where you are, and I'm over here in Japan where things are still mostly normal. But a lot of the people I speak to, including my family back in Australia, my friends over in the US and in the UK as well, the cities are empty. Like, people are stuck in their houses. They can't go out. They can only go out and get food once a week. So there's been moments where it did feel like it was kind of a luxury to be talking about Bitcoin. And I wanted to ask you about the broader issue of sort of like economic freedom and personal liberty as well. Because I know that's that's a topic you talk about a lot. And I've seen people go from wanting freedom over the past couple of weeks to becoming almost authoritarian. Like people are just like, please, somebody manage all this for me. Somebody take care of me. Somebody tell me what to do. And we saw people go from wanting to pay less taxes one week to maybe laughing at Andrew Yang for his UBI plan to almost demanding it a few weeks later. Has the situation changed? Like, do people really mean this now that there's a real crisis around?
Yeah, so there are two aspects to this. The second aspect, which you just ended on, was about how fear tends to give an advantage to authoritarianism.
It does.
And let's come back to that. But the first part of what you said has to do with this sense of it feeling, I don't know, maybe irresponsible or maybe weird to be talking about Bitcoin with excitement about all these possibilities at a time when people are losing their jobs or worried about the future, worried about death and things along those lines. So I want to make a case that it's a better time than ever to be talking about those things. So here's something that I wrote on Twitter, and I want you to push back on this. If it sounds like fluff, challenge me on it. Don't take it easy on me. Okay. But so here's something that I wrote, and then I want to expound on this. I said, PSA, don't let the coronavirus kill your personality. If you had interesting things to share that were not about the virus, it's still okay to share them. We need provocative and creative insights. We still need them. Don't let the world convince you that we all need to become journalists. So here's the deal. What a tragedy it is that so many brilliant, interesting, fascinating people have allowed this crisis to completely kill their personalities and reduce them to second, third rate, mediocre journalists who do nothing more than, share, coronavirus information. And don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with sharing information, but we need comedy more than ever. We need entertainment more than ever. We need good music more than ever. Now, here's my case for it. So, I remember hearing a discussion between a science and an artist, and they were talking about what it would be like if an alien species ever, discovered our planet. And they said, if some advanced alien species discovered our planet, they would probably be far more advanced than us in terms of math, science, and technology. So they would be pretty unimpressed by anything that we've accomplished there. We look like babies to them. But the one thing that would be most intriguing to them would be our art, the way we dance, the way we write poetry, the way we paint, the way we sing, because that's the stuff that comes from our essence, right? That's the stuff that isn't just about our intellectual ability to compute, but it's about who we are. It's about what we feel. It's about our sense of identity. And so the argument that he made is that it's our creativity that makes us human. It's not how much we know, but it's that natural inclination we have to build things, to experiment with things, to explore things, to seek to discover things. That is the impulse that makes us human. Even when we are children and we don't know anything about math, science, technology, or matters of intellectual sophistication, we have that fundamental need to explore and to break stuff and put it back together, right? Like that's who we are. And so when we cease to create, we cease to be human. We commit a kind of psychological suicide when we say, because times are difficult, I'm going to put creativity on pause. When you study the lives of people that have suffered, so I think Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is a very good book in this regard. I think if you take a look at something like Diary of Anne Frank, what you'll find is this theme of people who are in the midst of like great suffering or great fear. The thing that keeps them sane, the thing that helps them get through the day, is their ability to manufacture their own meaning by setting goals, however arbitrary, and then by consciously participating in the creative process. At a time like now, we can't control a whole lot.
No.
It makes it easy to be afraid. I mean, what can you control out there? Can you control if your neighbor has the disease? You can't control that. Can you control if the world ends in 5 days? You have no power over that. So if you sit around and you just, adopt this sober mindset of, oh, well, it would be really inappropriate for me to make someone laugh at this time because things are so rough. I'm just going to watch CNN all day and let someone paint all of these negative possibilities of what could happen to me. And all that creative stuff that made my life meaningful, I'm going to put that on hold so I can accelerate my path towards insanity and depression. I mean, that's nonsense. Like, this is the time to use whatever creative ability and gifts you have to sort of spread inspiration throughout the world. You don't have to force it on anybody, but this is the time to build because we need it for the sake of our own mental health. We need it. It's what makes us who we are. Absolutely,
yeah. And I think creativity can take many forms as well. I mean, you don't have to go on YouTube and make an Imagine video with all of your friends or even one of those awesome parodies of that. But you just anything you like. I mean, you just be creative in your local environment with your family at home, that kind of thing. Like you don't have to go out there and be public about it.
Yeah, and we have to stop talking about creativity as if it's the consolation prize. Oh well, times are hard, but hey, at least we have creativity. No, creativity is the whole freaking game. It's the point of the game. It's the playbook. It's the beginning, the middle, and the freaking end. Creativity is the starting point. It's not a consolation prize. It's not something we do in reaction to the fact that times are bad. It's something that we do at all times because we cease to be who we are when we abandon it. And to your point about being able to do it with anything, yeah, man, like imagine the most extreme case. Imagine if there were military, like around out in the streets. Imagine if they had the guns out and they're circling your place and they threaten to shoot you if you walk out of your apartment. Whatever your worst case scenario is, imagine that that's what it is. What can you do about that? What can you do about that other than choose between one of two things? You just give up, you capitulate, or you try to create something. You try to think creative. You try to come up with a new idea, or you try to make the most of your crappy situation by coming up with something within the realm of what you can control that actually means something to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're a pretty long way away from the worst case scenario right now. I mean, if I had to give an example of that, I think that movie The Road would be pretty close to my worst case scenario. And even that was far from all hope is lost. It was pretty much 99% of all hope is lost, but not quite all. And we're not at that stage, quite obviously. I mean, people might fear we get there, but I don't see any signs of that just yet. So I think it's more the uncertainty. I think that is probably putting people into a stagnation right now. They would like to do something, they'd like to get on with everything, but they just don't know what tomorrow is going to be like. And I guess from your perspective, you'd say it doesn't really matter, just do what you do anyway. Or should you be worried about what's going to change tomorrow?
Well, I like to play devil's advocate here and say you should be worried, but don't forget that other thing that you should be worried about. Because when most people say, should I be worried? What they think of is the scenario that everything's going to get worse. And yeah, you should worry about that. Rationality requires it. Consider that as a possibility. Do your best to prepare for it. But here's another possibility you should be worried about. You should be worried about the possibility that you spend the next 2 months doing nothing creative, building no new skills, learning nothing new, not making yourself better, just sitting around, eating snacks, getting lazy, worrying, fretting the whole time. And then in 2 months, we turn out to be okay. And you realize that you just wasted 2 months of your life not getting a leg up, not using these times to your advantage. You should worry about that possibility too. Because if we are not doomed, and no one can prove that we're not, if we are not doomed and we come out on the other side, the attention is eventually going to shift back to the people that have been developing their skills, developing their gifts, and who have the ability to create value. And you don't want to be in a position where you're going to regret not having done anything to make yourself more valuable during this time if everything turns out okay. So worry about that too.
Absolutely, yeah. I think might take a bit of personal inspiration from that one as well, because sitting around
Welcome
watching
back,
the
man.
screen. Yeah, Richard, welcome back.
Thanks.
I was actually missing those birds chirping.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm pretty sure my internet connection won't last because I managed to switch over to the data plan on my phone, which is extremely minimal.
Ooh, man.
And so
You sure you want to do
if I'm
that?
not streaming properly, then let me know. The other thing I can do is just, we can restart this. I can go and get a big data package and we can start again. I think my Wi-Fi is limited. I must have busted the limit or something like that. So sorry about missing that. I must have been gone for 5 minutes, TK. So, John, but TK, you were in the middle of enthusing about the possibilities. So I don't know what I've missed.
Yeah, TK was
I
just
think
telling
I'm
me
talking
about.
way too much, man. I should probably shut it up for a while.
No, the reason this show is happening is because I wanted you to come on and inspire us all, so you've certainly done a good job of that. We were talking about creativity in a time of crisis.
Yeah.
You're an artist, Richard. Did you have any input on that? How have you been staying creative, if at all?
Wow, I haven't been creative at all. I've been in a creative slump, actually. I haven't done anything. It's probably not the best topic of conversation because I've kind of let myself down on that. One of the reasons I came out here was just to kind of be free and just kind of paint and be creative, and I just haven't. I haven't done that at all. And in fact, I've been 100%, apart from my health and fitness, which has been very important to me, I've been 100% focused on SV and just learning about the tools. I mean, okay, and this is difficult. So Unwrite has produced this enormous catalog of new tools, and they look really fantastic. It looks really interesting. Problem is, I'm not technical, and I understand a lot of the concepts that make Bitcoin work, and I study what Craig says, and I read everything that he says, and Ryan, and I'm very articulate when it comes to explaining the tech and how it works. I can explain how hash functions work and how difficulty adjustments work in detail, for example. But if I look at Unwriter's tools, like the library, or Bitcon, the terminal, or Bitbus, or all of this stuff. It's like, this looks great, and I can kind of put the Lego blocks together, but I would have no idea what it's actually doing. I can conceptualize the system at large as well, but the very nitty gritty nuts and bolts of it, I think that's really difficult to explain to the broad population. And that's really just an issue for engineers to come along and say, oh, we can do this the normal traditional way, but also now we can do this on Bitcoin, not only build websites, but build all kinds of services.
Well, can I just take the chance to say now, Richard, I wish you'd get out there and start explaining it to people a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it might be wise.
Can you make that your personal project for this quarantine period?
Well, and I just had a look at the EFF as well, and I was just sort of thinking, well, maybe there are more opportunities, and I was thinking this last night, there's more opportunities to teach in this moment of crisis as well. Mm-hmm. One thing I really wanted to say, Andrew Cuomo was talking, the governor of New York was talking about sharing resources, sharing ventilators, and that the ventilators would go to New York first. And then once he was done with them, he'd pass them on to California, and it all sounds very tenuous about how the states are going to cooperate. Yeah. And suddenly there's this huge new stimulus bill, there's trillions more being printed. And it suddenly occurred to me, oh shit, what if they don't cooperate properly? What if the dollar collapses? At this point, this is a run to Bitcoin moment, but there's an awful lot of learning that needs to be done. So there's a huge opportunity to teach people and to help people as well. And say, if you want to share capital in this new system and use this as money, this might actually, work or take us over this intermediary period whilst we're adjusting. Because obviously the world economy is going to have to do a lot of adjusting in the next year and beyond. And there's a lot of hopes about issuing digital dollars on SV from the SV camp. And there's also signs from the Fed that they are seriously considering issuing a digital currency. But I don't think, but SV is not ready for it yet. And also, there is this huge misinformation gap or barrier that's been created by the culture, by the crypto culture, that just means, that just means it's difficult for serious agencies to take Bitcoin SV seriously. And I have a serious doubt as to whether they're going to even look at something with such a minority hash rate and take it as a serious possibility, because it's just dismissed out of hand by so many people, so many pundits, because they don't really understand the economic security model. Now, I think we all realize that there is a risk there, because most of the hash power belongs to a different chain. But also the security model relies on it being more expensive to attack. And so the security model stands in a sense. And I think that's why Craig's just like, it still works. We're going ahead, it's going to be successful, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Do you see that changing at the halving, or do you see the tide beginning to turn in that regard?
There are so many events. The halving I can't work out. I mean, I think if miners sell off in order to be able to continue to pay for their operations, some will go out of business. Maybe the price will go down a bit, and some will switch chains. But I think, and so that the halving is kind of is one concern, but it's kind of factored in. Maybe not priced in, but at least it's something that we all know about. The big unknown might be the Satoshi stash and the Kleinman case, and whether or not the trust moves coins across in the way that Craig has said he wants to do, or move value across from one chain to the other. I think that is a big event. Then there's the Tether question. If Tether suddenly collapses, if the New York Attorney General's office comes out and says, you guys are going to shut down right now, the whole space sort of shrinks to about 8% of its current size, or maybe less, who knows. And so that's a big event. So those are three big events, but then the real work, then the meat of this is if people are using this data money in a new data economy, if people are using it in the way that it's designed to be used to store data, to have this permanent record of auditable transactions for business and commerce, that's where the meat of this is. So in a sense, those other three things are obstacles in the way that add to the obstacle of misinformation in the space. So I would see this as, this is a critical moment, right? And it's a critical moment for the world economy. And it's sad because the technology that was designed 10 years ago has only just become ready to scale. But I see it as a very long timeline between people understanding what Craig's message is, understanding the technology and its uses and applications, and then adopting it. And adopting it rather than adopting BTC and the store of value narrative. So it just seems like a long timeline to me. And I think, Craig says quite openly, this is a 20 to 30 year project. This is not something that happens overnight. This is a long race. And you could see hash power migrate quite quickly. But I think it does depend on it really does depend on the profit, doesn't it? I mean, if it's being used and there's more profit there and there's more value in the token, then miners will migrate because it makes economic sense. There's no choice. But those are just a few things, I guess. That are hindering the progress.
Yeah, TK, did you have anything to say about that?
I mean, I think it's interesting because it seems to be the case that Bitcoin was created for a time such as this, right? Mm-hmm. It seems like, and I get how easy it is to make fun of people who say Bitcoin fixes this, where this refers to anything. But at the same time, I don't think there is any aspect of society that isn't improved by sound money. And I think Bitcoin, if it were ready to go, would be great for this time. But it doesn't seem like our infrastructure is set up quite yet to where we can educate everyone fast enough to onboard the world onto Bitcoin as a way to try to resolve this. But I am curious to know what your thoughts are about the talk going on around, you know, in the US at least, about, you know, digitizing the dollar, and maybe how that could be a way that a sense of urgency, a sense of crisis forces people to become a little bit more knowledgeable about this space, and kind of bringing us halfway in helping them understand why Bitcoin is superior to that, to just some digital fiat. Do you guys think that can help, or do you just feel like, nah, not really a big deal?
Well, I think it can help, but I don't know if it's going to help straight away. I mean, it might still take people a long time to realize that after we, what did we hear, a $6 trillion stimulus package today that may or may not involve like direct payments to people. As much as people seem to like that, I don't really know if it's sustainable or not. I think it's the sort of thing that could work, you know, once or twice. And if it doesn't, you know, you'd be like that meme of the guy just cranking out the presses while the chart goes up and down, and has very little effect. So if it has an effect, then that's going to have its own consequences. People will maybe trust the fiat system more. If it doesn't have an effect, people are going to trust it less and maybe look for alternatives. I don't know if that alternative is going to be Bitcoin, or, you know, if it's going to be rolls of toilet paper.
I don't think
they're going to look for something else.
I don't foresee the end of fiat. I think it's unrealistic in the short term, you know, within the next, say, 50 years. Or maybe a better way of saying this is, I don't see the end of fiat, period.
Yeah.
But maybe the end of this particular kind of fiat system is coming to an end.
But I think Craig and Calvin would agree with you, right? Like, don't they advocate for more like tokenized fiat, at least in the...
Well, I think that's the point of the design, right? Is that you create a system where everything can be recorded and has this digital token inside that can be used as money. And then you issue a digital dollar, and all the central banks issue their currencies as they usually do, but they use the blockchain as the database. And so to get to that point, you have to have all the hash rate, or the majority of the hash rate. You have to have the trust of the economies that are going to be throwing into this single blockchain. And you have to have billions of transactions per second possible. And you have to demonstrate that it's foolproof, that it's not going to, you know, fail or fuck up due to some kind of socialist consensus that then hijacks it. And I think, you know, we've lost that, or the technology has lost that trust. So that's going to take a long time to establish. And what I see happening in the meantime might be something like central banks issuing their own digital currency in their own blockchains or their own systems, or throwing into consortia. Like, for example, with R3, that was the idea, is to create a consortium of banks that would cooperate on a single chain. I don't think that's working. You saw JP Morgan come out and issue their own stable coin, and a private blockchain is tautology, is it? Or it's redundant, you know,
oxymoron.
It doesn't make sense. Sorry?
An oxymoron or a redundancy?
An oxymoron, yes. Yeah, I think that's the word I was looking for. But it does show that banks are coming forward and they're saying this is usable technology, and they're positioning themselves so that when the actual real base layer is mature, that they can then transition relatively easily, because they understand the technology, they understand the principles, and so forth. So, and we've seen the ECB are very bullish. They're exploring the possibilities of digital currency, and the Chinese are doing it too. So I do see it as, you know, everyone's going to do it in their own way. They're going to approach it their own way. They're going to try and position themselves. And then when the winning blockchain emerges, and I think we saw a Swiss banker at CoinGeek talking about this recently, when the winning chain kind of is clear and it's really obvious that this is the one that everybody's using, then they will increasingly start to jump on. And I think it's quite a long process. You know,
yeah,
I don't think anyone seriously thinks that a central bank will risk anything going wrong, or they won't risk a huge amount of their economy on experimental technology. So but it has to come from use first. It has to come from developers and from grassroots people using it as cash, uh, uh, and using the blockchain for what it was designed for first. So it has to mature, and consider that, Genesis upgrade only happened a couple of months ago now. So we're right at the beginning,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
I'm personally more interested in micropayments than in new sort of daily payments. It's got to be something new. I think we're not going to just suddenly switch from cash to Bitcoin to do the things that we already do now. Like the micropayments model is really good. I think being able to earn a few cents for a tweet or a video or something. The trouble with that is people are going to try it and they're going to make 5 cents after 10 hours work, and they're going to say, nah, this is BS. I can't be bothered with this anymore. But that's not how you do it. I think you've really got to build it up over time, and you got to focus on ways where that will still work for you, even if you're only getting paid like small amounts. Maybe put out less or put out more in smaller amounts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a good analogy for how it needs to win is the cell phone. So if you think about where we are with cameras now, most people don't buy cameras. Most people will prefer to buy an iPhone for the express purpose of meeting whatever their videography and photography needs are.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, that was not the case, right? When we had Kodak dominating the game, that wasn't the case at all. And cell phones were not invented to replace the camera. They were invented to do something entirely new that cameras couldn't do. And that's why we bought the cell phones. But then they put the camera inside. And at first we laughed at it, right? The first few iterations of that, we were like, man, this is terrible for cameras, but we needed it for the phone calls and for the texting and all of that stuff. But then eventually, because it was in everyone's hands, the advantage was there. And once the camera developed well enough, it's like, hey, we already got to use these things anyway. We might as well make this our camera source as well. Goodbye, Kodak. Now you've been replaced by the cell phone. And I think it's the same way with cash. We're not going to compete at the level of cash because that's like competing with the initial cell phone camera. It's just not obviously good enough to most people. But if we can put something in people's hands, a new tool that allows them to do something that's completely different, and they're using it anyway, that's how we get the store of value that BTC is artificially trying to create. Because people are going to say, well, hey, we're already using this stuff anyway for microtransactions and data storage. We're already using it. It's already valuable. We might as well do it for cash too. I think that's how we win. So I don't think it starts with the grassroots movement by onboarding a bunch of individuals or restaurants into taking payments and things like that. I think it's with the kind of move that we saw with the CoinGeek announcement, the EHR data, or the things that they're talking about right now with seafood supply chains. And this is where we can maybe address that concern you have about educating people. We have to make a distinction between people who have power, the power to make decisions, and people who have clout in a particular context, right? So when you go on Twitter, the people who have clout in that context aren't necessarily the people who have the most power in the real world. One of the most interesting things about podcasting is that you started to find out very quickly that some of the richest and most successful and most influential people don't have a strong social media game. They don't have blue check marks by their name, right? They're not even on Instagram really, but they're making major decisions that affect people. And if you can get those people on your side, the kind of impact you can have on the world can be huge. And it seems like, I mean, we're still in the early stages, but it seems like the BSV team is having conversations with big enough players who, for whatever reason, aren't really concerned with what's being talked about on Twitter. I mean, why in the world, when the people from the EHR got on that stage, because they had 3 representatives, right? And they talked about it, why in the world were they not concerned about what Peter McCormack says? Because they live in a different world, man. But I don't think any of those people who got up there and spoke have as many Twitter followers as Peter McCormack. He's got the fame, but they have the power to make a difference.
Yeah, in fact, I used to have people tell me that, people who had nothing to do with social media at all, but were, sort of, big investors, big whales in the world of Bitcoin, and they said, they would say, like, please just don't care about anything that happens on Reddit or Twitter, because that's not where the serious people are.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some serious people there, but the real deal happens away from there.
This is a bit like the seen and the unseen thing
Yeah.
that Greg was talking about, the French economist and Bastiat. And I think that's exactly right. It's the unseen of these, very large corporations that have huge amounts of capital, but also an interest in the possibilities of the technology. And they've got an overview of the economy. They're like, yeah, this is really good. This can really help us. This will change how we do our business. This can save us money. And that unseen market is just not, it doesn't figure in the rantings and ravings and thinkings of people on Twitter and Reddit. And I agree with you that battleground is redundant, really.
Yeah, I'm not saying that nothing important happens on Twitter or in that conversation, because you can still learn a lot. I'm just saying it's not the be-all, end-all of what's going on. You can be completely oblivious to all that and still be important.
Yeah, and it's also interesting too to look at how contextual fame and power can be. So for instance, you have people who, if they call you out on Twitter or start a fight with you there, oh man, you're gonna have a miserable Twitter life.
Yep.
But then if you just change platforms and move them over to Instagram, they're nobodies. Like, this is literally true, man. There are people like, you go on Twitter, they got like 30,000 followers. Everybody loves them. They have a whole lot of influence. Mm-hmm. And then on Instagram, it's kind of like, oh, they only got 400 followers and nobody listens to anything they say.
That's so true.
Or then you go on Facebook, oh, nobody even knows they exist. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you go out in physical space, it gets even more interesting, right? So just because someone is really cool or really powerful in one context doesn't mean that it transfers into every domain. Isaac Morehouse and we call this phenomenon Applebee's cool, because when I used to work at Applebee's, there were a couple of people there who had been at the restaurant for like 5 years. And so in that particular domain, everyone knew who they were, right? And if you wanted to be cool at Applebee's, you needed that person to acknowledge you and confer credibility on you. But outside of that Applebee's, no one knew who that person was at all. Right. And so you can't assume that just someone is cool in one context that they have power over your life in a different one.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. The other thing that I wanted to bring up with regards to this is something they call the September effect, which the semester online.
You froze up for a minute there.
So
Richard.
The first time they suddenly. Oh, so the September effect is when students turn up to university for the first time and they jump online maybe for the first time. So you get this huge influx of newbie learners in every September. Now, maybe that's a bit less now because more people have got computers at home. But I kind of just use it as as a phrase to describe what happens on social media like Reddit and Twitter, is you have these basically newbies who are coming into a whole new world for the first time, and they're learning about like politics and finance and technology all at once, but it gets mixed up with tons of misinformation, tons of conspiracy theories. They don't know what to believe. So if someone tells them a credible story, out they go. They not only believe it, but they also take that with them and they propagate the story to other people. So you've got this enormous kind of tsunami of ignorance that then gets all mixed up, and it carries an asset like Bitcoin or a crypto coin with it, and that's really, really hard to battle. And there's just no point doing that. There's no point in pumping price of a token, because the price pumpers really they're just carrying memes, and those memes are often completely worthless. Now, particularly with the BTC meme is really interesting. The culture of stuff of misinformation that people carry with them in order to pump the value of BTC. I mean, it's got a life all of its own, and I have to say, I feel personally responsible for my part in that back in the day, is carrying the misinformation and the ignorance that I picked up when I first entered the scene and propagating it to other people.
Well, you propagated it to me. Does that mean I'm misinformed?
Well, yeah, okay. So I feel a little bit responsible for my part in that. But I think, and it's been nice to have Craig kind of clear the air and say, this is this and that is that, and it's not like this. Actually, it's like this. And so, like, actually, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, you can inspire people to get into it, but I mean, after a while, they've got to find their own way, which is kind of what we're talking about here. It's just like you get in, and then you decide what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. I mean, and that part also, really is up to you.
I read something yesterday. It was a screen grab from, I think River posted it from Bitcoin Talk, from early in the scaling debate, and I suddenly got this flash of what Craig must have looked like to the BTC community when he first came in. And they were saying to themselves, we want to be able to run this system at home. We want a widely distributed base that keeps the currency absolutely set in stone. Nobody can change it because we've got so many nodes. No big corporation, no bank can come along and change it. And actually suddenly I had this flash of, that really makes a lot of sense. I can see where they're coming from. And that happens every few months or few weeks. I'm like, I see the other side of the argument again. But I think Craig just explains it so well that it's just like, the system that they want is not the system that was designed, and it's not the system that works. So it's not going to work long term. But I agree with you. It's just impossible to battle that on a social media level, and there's no point.
No, there isn't. I mean, unless you are the guy who's actually influencing the outcome of that, which is a very small minority of people. But, if you want to be an educator, you do have to understand these issues. I think, if you're not technical, if you're not legal, that kind of thing, if you're not an investor, you can still have an influence somehow, and you're going to need to understand what all the issues are. But we've got a whole bunch of different threads going on here today. I think we're talking about sort of Bitcoin technical on one hand, and we're talking about the current crisis in another thread, and then we're talking about things like creativity and roles you can play. So, is there some way we can sort of bring it all together, just as a kind of sign off? Because we've gone about 1 hour 10 minutes now. TK, I know you've got other things on your schedule. And I have an 8-year-old to take care of out here, so I'm gonna have to head off in a minute too. So I just want to bring it all together now, and just ask for your words on like what people should do. Like if they're sitting at home thinking, this Bitcoin, why would I think about Bitcoin right now? Why would I think about being a social media influencer or a journalist, or why would I care about economic freedom right now when there's no money in my wallet anyway? So yeah, I mean, when people turn this off and they go out into the world, like what would you like them to do next? TK, I'll let you start with that rambling question, if you can make any sense of it.
Yeah, so I'll say, as cliche as it sounds, that your future possibilities don't have to be determined by your present limitations. And so just because you don't have money now doesn't mean you don't have something within you that can be translated into value creation that ultimately results in you having wealth in the future. So you want to do the kinds of things that your future self will thank you for, right? So there are only two possibilities. Either the world goes on and we get through this, or we're all doomed and it's going to end any day now. If option number one actualizes and the world goes on, will you want to come out on the other side better than you are now? And the best way to do that is to practice, what I call, and I didn't invent the concept, non-zero days. Instead of thinking that you have to be a hero to change the world, just strive to be the kind of person who doesn't have any 0 days. Take something small, easy to start with, do something every single day that makes you more valuable, so that in the future, you have some kind of knowledge, some kind of skill that you can offer the world so that you can create wealth and opportunity. Because right now, everybody's focused on, what's in front of their eyes. Everyone's focused on the clickbait and the drama. That's natural. It's understandable. But at some point, the attention is going to gravitate back towards those who have talent, who have skills, who have insights that are special and that are unique and can use them to solve problems. Dedicate a little bit of time every day to getting in on some of that, because that's the best kind of investment that can change your life. And if we are doomed and the world's going to end any day now, what better way to go out than to go out in the middle of being involved in the creative process? What better way to be buried than to have people say of you, here lies a man, here lies a woman, here lies a child, here lies a person who went out fighting for freedom.
Very good. Very good.
I got nothing to add to that. I mean, I would say either way, you're going to end up doing something different to what you were doing before. So you might as well make it good.
Yeah, live like a legend or die like one.
What about you, Richard? What are you going to do when you get off?
It's a really strong message. I don't think I have a similar kind of a message other than to say that I agree with that. And I think starting the creative process is just a matter of kind of putting one, of trying something new, maybe, and not being afraid to kind of reach out to other people and say, hey, I don't understand what's going on here, or I'm having a problem here, and looking for the people that you trust and not being afraid to start new things. I am quite positive about Bitcoin in this situation. And I had a really positive experience yesterday, realizing that there may well be loads of people who this technology will help in precisely at this moment. So looking for this very, very specific use cases and applications that help people right in their moment of crisis, I think is the priority now. If it does help, if it can help, fantastic. Let's find out exactly how, and not sell the idea of Bitcoin on vague notions of freedom or pump up people's expectations, but actually find ways that directly applies to them. And if we can do that, then it's a very small start, but it is a start and it's very real, and it's something that we can build on for the next decade, or more. So that's kind of my only real thought, is very specific applications of the technology in people's lives right now to help them get through this crisis should be kind of the focus, or could be a really positive thing to focus.
If it involves Bitcoin, all well and good. If it doesn't, just as long as you're doing something else.
And that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, but I do want to make that pitch for Bitcoin, though.
Oh,
man.
Please. Yeah. This is a Bitcoin show.
Because the reason that we're talking is I think the three of us share the belief that this may be the greatest technological revolution of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Or certainly one of the greatest of all time. If this isn't Michael Jordan of technology, it's at least LeBron James, right? Like we're close, man. Like we are all witnesses to something pretty amazing that's happening. So of all the things that you can study in life, if you're watching this conversation in the first place, you have some interest in Bitcoin, and not everybody has the same amount of time. But if you're online asking people what are some good movies to watch on Netflix and you got time for that, hey, take 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day to work your way through the white paper, work your way through all the podcasts that are online, work your way through all the articles. There's more information than you can consume in a single lifetime, but you'll be amazed at what you can get through just by studying Bitcoin for 10 minutes a day. And you can eventually educate yourself into a state where you'll start to generate creative ideas for how you can contribute to the ecosystem. But don't put that kind of pressure on yourself too early. Be curious, study, invest in your knowledge, and capitalize on the compounding interest that comes from learning.
Yeah, that's great advice, man.
The compounding interest that comes from learning. Can I steal that?
Second that.
Can I use that, because I like it a lot. Alrighty, thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, it was it was a little different to what I had in mind. I think I was probably going to go more for the fear factor originally, but I'm glad we didn't, because we went to a much better place instead. So thanks a lot, guys. Both of you, I'd really love to come back and talk to you both on extended topics, because I know you got a lot more to say. You're welcome to come on the show anytime.
Awesome.
Right.
Well, I look forward to the next round, and it's good seeing you both.
All right.
Great.
Catch you later, guys.
Thanks, John. Nice to meet you, TK.
Nice meeting you too. Thanks, Joe.
Cool.